So the company, like you mentioned, is called CCI Projects. And we're developing right now our flagship venture, which is Rivali Park in Borivali. So I'll talk a little bit about the project, then I'll jump back to the company.
Yeah.
So Rivali Park is situated, it's bang on the Western Express Highway in Borivali in Bombay. Location is excellent. And we're developing about 14 acres of residential development. We've already completed 2 phases of this development. So 2 buildings we handed over of about 200 flats in 2016. And the current phase, the one you alluded to, where we got Swami funding, is about 700 flats. And we've completed that just a couple of months ago. So we got our OC in April, and in the last few months, we've been handing over the apartments to our home buyers. So these are the first 2 phases of development, about 900-ish apartments. And we've got some way to go. So we've already started planning our next 2 buildings. And we're looking to launch those sometime in the very near future. Early next year, I would say between Jan and March of next year, we'll be launching those. So a little bit more about the project. So the tagline or the ethos really of the project is human, full stop, nature. So the philosophy kind of behind that was, look, our location is bang opposite Sanjay Gandhi National Park. So let's take advantage, or let's really appreciate the gem that we have, or the jewel that we have in Bombay of Sanjay Gandhi National Park, which most people living in Bombay don't really know about. I mean, I myself have grown up in Bombay, and I had no idea until, this project, frankly, about the size, the scale, and, just the biodiversity that exists in Sanjay Gandhi National Park. So to give you a sense, the size of the park itself is 22,000 acres. The scale and the size, when you talk to most people, Mumbaikars, they have no idea about it. So, and to give some context, Central Park in New York, which is where, the most prime real estate in Manhattan or in, the US is, park overlooking real estate. Yeah. And that's only 800 acres. So we're talking about something that's 30 times the size of that, and then we have that jewel in our city. So anyway, so the philosophy was human and nature. So integrating, this urban jungle of Bombay with the gem that we have, which is the national park. So in that spirit also, that was kind of the spirit of our company as well. So the tagline of our company, CCI Projects, is building responsibly. So what that means is, the design of the homes first. So well-designed, kind of practical homes with a focus on quality as well as sustainability. And also we wanted to do some to give back and kind of add value to the national park. So we were very involved in the national park some time ago. We donated bicycles, we donated garbage cans, we did a signage project where we set up signage all through the park. And this was all, after discussing with the park officials and so on and so forth. Naturally, as things kind of slowed down in the economy and things slowed down in our sector, our focus had to shift to business and getting that right first. So in the last few years, we haven't done much with the park, but we'll be doing that going forward. So the philosophy of the business or the company is building responsibly. And the philosophy of the project has been this, that, integrating the national park with our development.
The requirement of the consumer has changed significantly. So from what you've built, your 900 odd flats that you've built and the remaining apartments that you're going to build, what are the changes and what is the change in consumer psyche?
So absolutely. So one is, there's been a big push or surge in demand itself. So as people have spent time in their homes, they realize that, look, either they want a bigger home or a more modern home, or they want to live in a facility with amenities, or they just want their own space away from extended family or close enough to extended family, but not quite living with extended family. So this, staying at home has kind of sparked this demand where people are saying, look, I want a new space for X, Y, and Z reasons. Also in terms of design, a few changes, like maybe a home office room, things like that. Amenities are also very important now where, I don't need to go anywhere. I can, my kids can go down and play, or I have a gym in the building and so on and so forth. So those things are also important. Another shift that's taken place, I think was already starting to take place before the pandemic, but has been accelerated by it, is that, consumers are favoring homes or projects which are ready to move in. So, projects have obviously been delayed in the past. There's been a problem plaguing the industry. So consumers are now kind of wary about that. And they say, look, unless we see the building is ready or close to ready, we don't want to invest. And that's reflected in the price as well. So the price that we were selling at versus the price we're selling now, since our property is ready to move in, there's already a 15 to 20% delta just in a 3-month period, just by virtue of being ready to move in. So customers see value in that and are willing to pay value for that as well.
Also, when somebody buys into a house, new projects you're not able to sell. Is the demand still for completed projects?
No, I won't say that. I won't say that, but I would say that it's skewed towards completed project, and the value that you can get for a completed project is higher. So the price that you can get essentially is higher. So there is absolutely demand for under construction projects, and I think demand is kind of proportional with the speed of construction as well. So as consumers see that construction is taking place, see with their own eyes, that kind of confidence building takes place.
A RERA registration, has that brought more confidence in the consumer?
Yes, I would say so. It's brought more confidence, brought more transparency, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to upload on the RERA website, and customers can see that. So I'm sure it has. It's made the sector more organized as well as a whole. So these are certainly positives that RERA has brought about.
What about the speed of construction? You know that labor went away during the pandemic and so on. So are you using more technology? Are you doing anything to speed construction?
Not to reduce labor intensity, but we are using technology, especially for our upcoming phase. And that's been a big focus and drive of mine personally and of the company as well. So one is on the design side. We're using, in the process of implementing completely up to date, the best technological practices for design, and that will carry through on towards execution. So the software that we're using to design the building, and the tools that we're using to execute those designs are going to be state of the art, and we're looking at 3D drawings rather than the conventional kind of 2D drawings, which is a practice across the world, and that's something that we'll be adopting. It's not quite widely accepted in India, but something we'll be doing. Few other small technological kind of innovations. One is there's a mobile-based app that allows you to do the construction monitoring. So rather than the kind of traditional system of either writing in a book or an engineer and entering in Excel, you just enter kind of details in your phone on an app, you take photos, so the supervisors get a live update. So things like that. And that just makes things more efficient and makes things more organized, reduces mistakes as well. But yes, there has been an issue with labor and manpower in the last 2 years, and we faced that issue. I mean, obviously, we're not immune to that. So we faced that issue, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, and that impacted our schedule considerably. But that's, we took measures as well at that time. So we built, quite sophisticated accommodation for our labor. So we already had accommodation on our site, and we said, look, we can accommodate about 300 people or more, around 400 people in those facilities. But because of COVID and social distancing and things like that, we may need to expand that. So we more than doubled our capacity to accommodate the same number of people, just to give more comfortable living space to workers. So if you took a few other steps as well, this was one of the biggest steps, and we invested a lot of money early in the pandemic, around May last year, that look, this is what we need to do, and it bode us really, really well.
Now let's talk about the project. What I asked you, why did the project run into trouble, and why did you have to source Swami funds?
Sure. So the same issues that plague the rest of the industry. So naturally, being part of the industry, we have the same challenges. So historically, kind of regulatory changes that took place, or change in the approval processes that took place, impacted our schedule. Lack of availability of material and so on, of course, impacted the schedule.
What changes in policy? Could you tell me?
Sure. The new DP and the new DC are coming in, which was X number of years ago now. But that plans had to undergo change, and so that impacted the schedule. But this was a little bit earlier. Demonetization, which of course is a great step for the country, saw a short-term kind of shock for the real estate industry specifically. So that naturally impacted sales, and sales obviously impact cash flows, and cash flows obviously then impact construction and various other, then it's kind of a domino effect that takes place, and the problem keeps compounding. So these series of things, then RERA coming in as well, created a bit of a slowdown initially. Again, it was a shock to the industry. So sales again slowed down, and generally there's been a slowdown in real estate in the last 5 years nearly, you can say now. So that slowdown impacts us, and like I said, the problem keeps compounding. Your project is delayed, and anyway sales are slow, and because the project is delayed, sales are slow, etc. And then the big kind of black swan event which took place was the NBFC crisis in 2018. So when that happened, our credit or the credit in the market completely dried up, and our credit completely dried up as well. So lines that we had sanctioned to complete our project were withdrawn. And, we can understand, given the situation which was evolving every day and worsening every day, I should say. And so we were running kind of helter-skelter to try and figure out how to complete the project. And at that time, the project was again at the very final stage. So all the buildings were up, all the 6 building superstructures were up. It's just the internal finishing that needed to take place of the apartments and some of the infrastructure work and the amenities and so on. So really the bulk of the work, or the hard work, heavy lifting, I would say, was done. And the last 20% or so of the project was remaining. So we then, the government announced this Swami initiative, which is, obviously a huge success and a great idea as well at the time. So recognizing that there's a problem in the industry and putting forth the appropriate solution. So that was a big step. And at the same time, so we were exploring with Swami, we were exploring with other funds similar to Swami, who were coming in with the same concept of this last mile funding. They come in, give you the funds, you need to complete the project, exit first, and then the other lenders exit. So that was one thing we were pursuing very actively. And at the same time, we were looking to monetize part of our land. So we said, look, we don't know what's going to take place. We're committed to completing the project. That's a priority for us. And whatever it takes, we have to do it. So if we're not able to get money from our lenders, and if we're not able to get money from new lenders, let's look at also monetizing part of the land. So we had 22 acres with us. We sold off about 8 acres to the DMart group in around the same time where the Swami thing happened. So we were looking at both things parallelly, just in case one of them don't materialize, the project should be completed. So that's what we had to do. And thankfully, both things happened, so we could reduce our debt considerably. We also, got Swami funding, and we're nearly giving them an exit as well now, Swami. And we got our OC in April this year. And like I mentioned, out of the 700-ish flats, 450-ish, just under 450 apartments have already taken possession. And some people have started living here as well. The others have given it out for, renovations and fit outs and things like that.
How much debt did you have as a company? Would you like to talk about it or no?
Not particularly. Not an abnormal amount. It's just that when credit completely dried up, the challenge wasn't too much debt. The challenge was just no liquidity. So that really was the issue then. But then anyway, we said that, look, going forward, we take a very conservative approach. As far as the business plan is concerned, we don't know tomorrow how markets will react, how sales will be, and so on and so forth. So we won't take a very aggressive approach, or rather we take a very conservative approach. So very low reliance on sales for our next few buildings. Of course, we want to sell, but we'll rely less on sales, and we don't want to borrow too much. So what that means is that we shrink our development. We don't do 6 buildings at a time like we did last time. We'll do 1 building, and with some gap, do the second building, and then after that, we can move on to the next building. So conservative, and what we plan to do it right and do it on time is the philosophy, and that's what consumers expect as well.
How many units would you have to sell? What percentage of units would you have to sell to actually execute the building in case of contingencies, right? And this is something that the Indian developer industry has not done for a long time. But I think increasingly that's the way to go. You will have to think about foreclosures. Where will your money come from in case one fund dries up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, you have opted for smaller phases of the project.
Exactly.
What are the challenges when you don't have economies of scale? Then you have much smaller units, a number of units. So what changes in that process?
Well, so we won't be small still. So what we're talking about, even doing 1 building at a time, we're looking at about 5 lakh square feet of saleable area. So, 7-8 lakh square feet of carpet area per building. So it's still sizable. It'll be a 45-ish story structure. And if once we do our second building a year apart, we're looking at 2 buildings of, 600-ish apartments. So it still be sizable in that sense, but just de-risk to the extent that it's 1 building at a time versus 6 buildings at once. So there's design risk associated with that, there's execution risk associated with that, and there's finance risk also when we do all together. So we are trading off some economies of scale for sure, But I mean, that's, I think, a small price to pay rather than the flip side, which is the project getting, coming under stress for for timely completion.
Tell me about your experience working with the Swami Fund. I'm not looking at what went in. What I'm looking at is the kind of project management that happened. And because you finished with less funds than projected and faster than what you projected, how did you achieve that?
So one is they were very clear in the beginning, and I think as a mandate, they're very clear that they'll also take a very conservative kind of approach to business plan. So their objective is that homeowners should get their apartments, right? So if they take a very aggressive approach or perspective on business plan, then they're relying too much on sales and collection, which they didn't want to do. So to that extent, the sanction was higher, just to ensure that the project is completed. And given the conservative business plan kind of approach, we outperformed the business plan because we did moderately well. I won't say we did exceptionally well. As far as sales is concerned, we did moderately well. But now we're doing really well now that the project is completed, which is going back to what I was saying earlier, that once the project is completed, you see both velocity increase as well as a price appreciation. So that's regarding the business plan. In terms of the project management aspect, it's been very, very stringent. So they have auditors who are kind of permanently here, who are concurrently verifying various business processes and various bills, etc., etc. So everything goes through them. Payments as well. We don't release any payments directly. So typically the process is we propose a list of vendors or contractors to whom payments are to be made, pass it through their auditor certifies them. If there's any questions, etc., comes back to us naturally. Otherwise, certifies them, goes to Swami. Swami will take a look at that as well. And if Swami has any questions, they'll come back to us, they'll discuss with us. And if not, Swami will approve, and then the bank directly pays to our contractors and vendors. So nothing comes into our account either. So that's the nature of the tight control. I mean, the positive of that obviously is from their point of view that funds are used in the right place, and it completely aligns with our objectives also, because we are also interested in completing the project. So it wasn't an issue for us. Obviously, the flip side is that this process takes up time, but again, it's a trade-off that's worth it given the objectives.
Do you think this will redefine the role of lenders?
Yes and no. I think there'll be all types of lenders. So I don't know if it could or should redefine the role as lenders. It's kind of like unless it's like a stress situation, I don't see why a lender would need to take such strict measures. So obviously the Swami Fund their mandate is different, and being a government fund and being taxpayer money, the situation is different. But for a private lender, I don't know why they would want to take such a tight approach, because
they put 100 to 125% risk weightage, right? A lender today doesn't release money freely because the risk weightage is very high. So
sure.
My only question was, will another era come where the lender is a little more invested and the risk weightage can be brought down?
So I think you're already seeing that. So already lenders are having more of a say. So one is on the project management front, like the Swami is doing. So other lenders are doing that as well. And secondly, also lenders are playing more of an active role in participating in the business. So if they see, for example, sales not taking place, they're coming on board and saying, why are sales not taking place? Do this, bring these people on board, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. So lenders are, I mean, naturally they'd be impacted as well if the business isn't performing. So they do take a more active role. But I think as well, there's a situation of kind of, at the end of the day, there's one kind of, there's one captain driving the, steering the ship. So it can become a little complicated. That's the flip side of that. So I think it's all about balancing everything.
Tell me about the location. When the metro was announced, we did notice in the Magic Bricks prop indices, I used to notice that there was a distinct trend towards the Dahisar, Borivali. There was a pickup in demand and pickup in searches. So tell me about the location and the role of an infrastructure in pushing locations.
Sure. So our project, like I mentioned, is bang on the Western Express Highway, literally. So it's Eastern Borivali. And the metro, as you mentioned, is incidentally coming up right in front of our plot. In fact, they've taken part of our plot for the development of the metro as well. So location-wise, I mean, it's perfect really. And from a connectivity point of view. Also, like,
what did the metro announcement do to your location? If you could just deconstruct that.
So I think, and this is something that we've seen in Delhi also. So what happened here in Bombay, and I don't have too much hard data on this, but we did see more interest and we did see more excitement around the project. But I don't know if that translated necessarily to numbers immediately. So I can't say that, we're getting a premium because of the metro right now. And I can't say that we're getting X percentage more sales because of metro right now. There probably is an impact, but we don't have the metrics. But what we saw in Delhi, for example, or we know from Delhi, for example, and what we do expect in Bombay is that once the metro is operational, you will see a very clear delta there. So you will see projects where the metro is operational, is, prices are higher or demand is more and so on and so forth. At the moment, keeping in line with our kind of conservative business plan approach, we're going to focus on this and do, what we have really well rather than kind of spreading ourselves too thin. We do have other land parcels that, we have an interest in or that we have an eye on, and we'll keep that kind of active in the background. But no launches of new projects apart from this upcoming phase, which is still considerable. Nothing on the anvil immediately.
And this is supposed to be an integrated project. Explain the integrated part of it to me.
So initially it was a mixed use project. That was what was envisaged initially, and that's what was master planned as well. But given the situation a couple of years ago, we decided to monetize part of the land. So it changed from a mixed use development to a purely residential development. Of course, there's some retail components as well. But nothing massive like a mall. So in our current phase as well, we've got about 10,000 square feet of retail, bang on the service road, right, diagonally across from the metro station that we're developing. Mm-hmm. And going forward, we would do some retail component as well, and possibly some office spaces as well. That's something that we're ideating at the moment, whether to do some commercial space as well. Mm-hmm. But it's purely residential at the moment.
Thanks so much, Rohan. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Likewise.